welcome to the reshooting of episode
Hello
50.
and welcome to the reshooting of episode.
There was technical difficulties yesterday, so I'm doing a reshoot because my audio decided to not quite work. So we are going to pick up on talking about druid spells. Just like clerics, they go from 0 level to 9th. So there is a lot of spells to go over. Even though they don't necessarily have huge lists, they still have a decent number. A bunch of the spells they do share with clerics. And you can see here just off the 0 level spells that they have Create Water, Cure Minor Wounds, Detect Magic, Detect Poison, Flare, Guidance, Light, Mending, Purify Food and Drink, Read Magic, No Direction, Resistance, and Virtue, which is a lot of spells that clerics also have. And you have to remember that druids technically are a type of divine caster, even though it's more nature based. It's still technically divine magic. They use their wisdom for it. So a lot of their spells they will be sharing with clerics. It's not till you get to first level spells where you get a bunch of spells that aren't cleric specific, but more druid specific. Which lets us go straight into Calm Animal and Charm Animal, which works just like Calm Person and Charm Person, but it's animals. They do get Cure Light Wounds, which is another spell clerics have. But the thing with their their cure spells is some of the cure spells they get at later levels than what the cleric would. They cannot spontaneously cast cleric spells. What they can cast spontaneously is summon nature ally spells. So kind of like how a cleric burns a first level spell and he gets a cure light spell, meaning he can use a cure light spell. A druid can burn any first level spell they have prepped and replace it with summon nature's ally of that level. So if they burn a first level spell, they get summon nature's ally 1. If they burn a fourth level spell to do summon nature's ally, it's the fourth level version of it. So instead of just doing spontaneously healing, they get spontaneously help from the wilderness, with the only real limitations to summon nature's ally is the creature actually has to be in that environment. So you can't be in the middle of the desert and summon a whale, because a whale is not going to be in the desert for multiple reasons. Main reason is it's a desert, not the ocean. So kind of like with summon monster spell. Okay, what are you doing? The book decided to have a slight hiccup because I pushed the wrong button. So similar to how summon monster spells, if you're not the right alignment, you can't summon certain stuff off it. So if you're a good guy, you can't summon evil creatures. If you're a bad guy, you can't summon the good creatures. This is, if you want to summon a wolf, wolves have to actually be in the environment. So if you're in the middle of the desert on a ship trying to fight off pirates, wolves aren't going to show up to help you. You can probably get sharks, maybe an octopus, but not a wolf or a bear or a mighty peregrine falcon. You can get like an albatross. So it is somewhat limited to not only what's on the list, but what's on that list that's actually in the environment you're in. But it does, in general, work just like summon monster spells, with the difference of it's a it's a permanent creature that if it dies, its body doesn't mysteriously disappear. It's an actual dead creature, which does lead into the problems of misuse of the spell. For instance, in one of the games I ran years ago, the party was dealing with a very hungry bear and it was trying to get a new party member that was stuck in a tree. The party's response with the druid failing all of their handle animal spell effects was the ranger actually calming the bear down, getting the bear not to try to eat anyone, and then the druid deciding to use summon nature's ally to get food. That is a misuse of the spell because a creature shows up to aid you to aid you, not to be a sacrifice, not to be food for something else. It shows up to help you get out of trouble, defeat the monster, or help you get away. Not for you to go, oh hey look, here's your food. It's like, no, there's a difference between summoning a deer to just randomly toss out a bear for food and hunting on behalf of the bear. Not the same thing. Mainly because you're using magic, which is tied to divinity, to summon the creature to aid you. So there's certain things that if you do, you can end up getting in trouble because that's like with the cleric misusing spells, which is all circumstantial. A druid can end up in the same boat. By leading some of the other spells they get detect animal or plants, which works just like any other detection spell. It's a 60-foot cone, and if you're looking for plants, it pops up plants. Not necessarily normal plants. It's more like plant creatures. So woodwoads, excuse me, treants, shambling mounts. So like just plant creatures or animals if you're doing ticked animals. Detect snares and pits, reveals natural or primitive traps, which pretty much means it can't pick up a bear trap, but it can pick up a pit trap. So it's the difference in level of traps. There is Endure Elements, which helps with hot and cold. Entangle, which is generally a good one for either stopping creatures from escaping you or letting the party get away, because it's a 40-foot radius. You pick a spot, everything within 40-foot radius can be affected by it, and it pretty much to a certain degree animates the plants to hinder and or somewhat entrap creatures. There's a creature in the affected area. If it fails its reflex saving throw, it's stuck there. It can't move. If it passes, its AC gets lowered a little bit and it's reduced to half movement, and it can't do any sort of charges or runs because it's trapped in the zone. If there is no plants for the spell to affect, it does not work. So if you're in a dungeon, it's not going to work in a dungeon. If you're in a city, it's not going to work in the city. If you're in a desert void of any actual significant plant life, it's not going to work. Because again, it can't. If there's no plants, it just won't work. Fairy Fire is a good one. Because if you manage to have it land on a target, it outlines them. So an invisible creature now has an outline around it. It cancels blurring effects and most concealing effects. So it's a real, I want to hit you with no penalty type thing, so here's the spell to do that. Next, we have Goodberry. Goodberry, you pick a bundle of berries, you roll a 2 die 4, and somewhere between 2 to 8 of those berries are capable of curing people of 1 hit point to a maximum of 8 per 24-hour period. Now, it doesn't conjure them out of nothing, because you have to find actual berries to cast a spell on. And if you only have 4 berries, that's the maximum amount you can have, because that's the amount you have. If you manage to have like 15 berries, well, you're only affecting 2 die 4 of them. So you are limited to not only the 2 die 4, but by how many berries you actually have. And it's still a great way to help with minor injuries, because here's a berry that cures 1 hit point. Next, we have hide from animals, which works similar to hide from undead. So if you're successful with it, animals literally don't know you're there until you do something to trigger them knowing it, like attacking them or touching them. So you have to do some sort of interaction to break the spell. So they, yay. Jump does just what the name suggests. It gives you bonuses to your jump checks, so you can jump higher and or further. Does it's a pretty neat spell for trying to leap over things. But it's also a not commonly used spell, because you would be surprised about how little people actually invest in jump until it's too late. Long Strider is great because your base land speed increases by 10 feet, which is always good moving 10 feet, because that can help you in and out of combat. It also helps with certain things like jump checks and swim speeds, because swim speed, a move action equivalent, is a quarter of your overall speed, which if your speed is 40, because a long strider, you would have a 10 speed, or it's as a full round action, it's half your overall speed. So instead of swimming out of 15, you swim out of 20, so you're swimming a lot faster. When it helps with jump checks, if you do a running jump, you add an additional +4 because of that extra 10 feet. So it's like jumping becomes easier. Magic Fang is great because you choose one natural weapon and it has to actually qualify with a natural weapon. Most playable creatures don't have natural weapons. They don't have a natural claw attack or a natural bite attack. Even though they actually have hands and teeth, it's not doesn't count as an actual natural attack, so you can't use on it. But it's real great for animal companions, or if you have the right stuff as a druid. When you turn into animal and you have the right feat, they let you cast spells as in your animal form. You can cast it on yourself then, because in animal form you have at least one natural attack. And what it does is it turns it into a +1. It's pretty much a +1 weapon at that point, which is always great. Magic Stone, just like with the cleric spell, 3 stones. You get a +1 on attack rolls, and they do, not counting strength. Well, you do count your strength in, but without a strength modifier, it's a die 6 +1 on damage. So they have that. Obscuring Mist, which is centered on you, and it gives concealment benefits. By centered on you, it's when you cast it, it's centered on you, which then as you move, it does not move. It's a stationary effect, but you are the center of it when it initially cast. Pass Without Trace is a good one, because as long as the spell is in effect, you don't leave any sort of tracks, be it physical footprints or scent. So tracking you becomes really, really hard because you leave no trail. Produce Flame, I personally love Produce Flame because you get a pretty much a baseball-sized ball of fire in your hand, and it does a die 6 with additional +1 per level. I think it caps out at +5. But you get to either use it as a touch attack or a range touch attack, which means you're going after one of the lower of its ACs. And even though you can only use it once per round, you get it for a number of rounds equal to your level. So at level 5, you can use it once per turn for 5 levels, which is pretty good when you're doing a fire damage, because unless it's resistant or immune to fire damage, you're like, I don't care about your DR, take fire damage. Shillag, probably horrifically mispronounced that. Like, horrifically. I just realized I need to do this, because I was on the wrong screen. Gotta love realizing that a wee bit too late. But bear with me for a bit. But that's the spell. What it does is when you have a cudgel or a quarterstaff, you cast it on it, and it becomes a +1 weapon, and that does a die 10 damage for 1 minute per level. So that's a really good of. I don't really want to invest in some super expensive weapon at the moment, so I'm going to use the basics. And even though some people may laugh like, you're not a monk, why are you using a quarterstaff? Well, it's because you cast a spell on it and it becomes a +1 weapon, which is +1 to attack and damage rolls, and it's doing a base die 10 damage. So right there, you don't have to stress a lot of things because you're doing a decent damage output with a bonus to hit. And that's a first level spell too. Speak with animals is great, as when you cast it, for the length of the spell, you can communicate with animals, so you can get information from them, ask them goofy questions, and just generally communicate. So that's really good in wilderness environments when when you encounter animals that aren't openly hostile or aggressive towards you. Then there's Summon Nature's Ally 1, which we already covered it. It lets you summon creatures off the list and environment. So it's real good to have a temporary friend helping you with things. When we get to second level spells, there's a decent amount. Starting off, there is Animal Messenger. It sends a tiny animal to a specific place, and it's pretty much, it goes there and it delivers a message to whoever happens to be there, unless it's for a Pacific. There's more specifics with the spell that we'll cover when we go over the spell specifically. And it's generally not the best because the time it takes the animal to get there is how fast the animal can go. So if you choose the wrong animal that's generally slow, it's going to take it a while to get there, and the person who needs the message may not actually get the message because they are already long gone before the animal gets there. Animal Trance it fascinates 2d6 worth of hit die of animals, so they become fascinated with you. So that's real good to try to get the attention of animals, or at least temporarily take a group of animals and let the party single out one at a time. That can help out a lot, so the party has some time to regroup, recover, and readjust to the combat. Bark Skin is another good one because you get an enhancement bonus to natural armor starting at a +2. And as you get higher level, you get additional bonuses to that. I think it can max a +5. So at early levels and high levels, Bark Skin is super effective because, again, giving someone an AC bonus that stacks with a bunch of other stuff they have is always great. Then we have Bear's Endurance, Bull Strength, and Cat's Grace, which work just like the Cleric versions. So +4 to the corresponding stat for 1 minute a level. So that's always great. Chill Metal. Pretty much, it starts to make a... It pretty much makes metal that you affect with a spell start to get rapidly cold, which starts to damage his creatures touching it. So if something's wearing a lot of metal, like someone in full plate, you cast it on them, they'll start to take a low amount of damage, then some moderate amount of damage, and then as it starts to temperature back to a normal temperature, they still take some more damage. So it's like, I think like 3 to 5 rounds worth of damage, and it's cold based. And normally it's pointless to start taking the armor off because the spell's going to be done or no longer in effect by the time you get the armor off. So it's pointless to take the armor off. So they're kind of just stuck taking a bunch of damage. Delay Poison works just like the Cleric version. It stops poison from harming the subject for an hour per level. Fire trap is it's not a bad one. You place it on an object that can be opened. Does its open object, which like a door, a box, a book, a backpack. When it gets open, it triggers the effect. It may not be a lot of damage. It's a die 4 plus 1 per level, but it's pretty decent. So you can stop people from trying to steal from you by when you go to sleep, cast it on things you don't want to get opened. Or if you're trying to temporarily protect an area from having monsters just wander in, you can cast it on a door, so anything that opens the door, the fire trap goes off, damaging it. Flame Blade is another personal favorite of mine. You get melee touch attacks that does a die 8 with additional plus 1 per 2 levels. I can't remember the cap off the top of my head, but it's pretty much it's a flaming sword. You don't add your strength to the damage. You still add it to the hit chance, but not the damage. But you're not necessarily over concerned with it for two main reasons. The first one, it's a touch attack, so your accuracy to hit is really good because you're going after a lower AC. Then you have the fact that because it's a spell, when you get high enough level to cast get high level slots, you can start putting meta magic feats on it like maximize. So now you're doing maximum damage. In power, which now you're doing 50% more damage. So there's meta magic feats you can throw on it that make it even really better because you're just doing more damage. So there's ways to just make it better. Or if you're casting it with meta magic rods that don't take up higher spell slot levels, you can use you can use a rod to make it better when you cast it. Then we have Flaming Sphere. It's a rolling ball of fire that lasts 1 round per level. When we go to cover the spell specifically, how fast it can go and how far it can go from you will be listed, but it's pretty much every single turn a ball of fire rolls through and you can damage things that it interacts with. Fog Cloud. It's a better version of Obscuring Mist. Because when a fog appears and it obscures vision, making it harder for people to see and technically harder to move. Gusts of Wind has the ability to blow away or knock down small creatures. So pretty much halflings and gnomes are at risk of being knocked down by this, but you can also use it to get rid of fog cloud or obscuring mist or a lot of other gaseous things by just having strong wind just blow through the area. So it does have its uses, even though that's another spell that I have rarely seen actually used, and as a DM's using it to mess with or flirt players. Heat metal works just like chill metal, but it's heat based instead. So it's like it starts to heat up the metal before it starts to cool back down to normally. So you can pretty much cook people in their armor. Hold Animal works like Hold Person, but it's an animal instead of people, and it paralyzes them for a few rounds. So it's still good to either stop a creature from escaping and or lets the party escape or temporarily lets the party have a few rounds to readjust to whatever you're fighting, as long as it actually fails the saving throw. Owl's Wisdom. It's a wisdom boosting spell. It works just like the cleric version. So that's great. Reduce Animal. It lowers the size category of one willing animal. Keywords willing. When we go over the spell itself, we'll be able to cover the actual true restrictions of it, but just off this, it has to be a willing creature, so unwilling creatures aren't really affected by it, which is a keyword with a lot of spells. If it specifically says willing creature, it either means the spell Spell does not work on the unwilling, or or it just it's easy to resist. That's why looking up the spell itself is always important. Because if you don't, you're not going to know the actual details of it until you cast a spell, and the DM now has to go look it up on your behalf because you didn't actually verify what the spell is actually capable of doing, and then the DM gets to look and go, oh, you cast a spell, it auto fails because it only works on willing creatures. Because yes, I've been there on both ends. I've cast a spell in my early years of playing, not knowing that it doesn't work on that. That sucks. And that's how I actually initially learned that hold person doesn't work on monstrous creatures. Hold monster does. So it's key events like that that trigger more reading, more research to verify what it actually works on, what it doesn't actually work on, and how much of a stickler to the book the DM's really gonna be. Because if a DM lets a spell work, even though it shouldn't, that's their prerogative. Run with it. Have fun with it. But moving on to the rest of the second level druid spells. Yeah, we have resist energy. It pretty much gives you a resistance 10 to a specific type of energy. So just like a specific cleric also gets that one. But it's like, yay, I don't want to take fire damage. Resistance 10. Lesser Restoration works just like the cleric version. It dispels magical penalties or repairs ability damage. Soften Earth and Stone. Turn stone to clay or dirt to sand, or mud. So it's like you can turn one earthy substance into another earthy substance. So that can help either fortify a location or unfortify a location. Spider Climb. It lets you walk on walls and ceilings. So pretty much you get a climb speed equal to your base land speed. Speed to just maneuver around things a lot easier and funner. So it's a good maneuver spell because you can get in and out of situations with it a lot easier. The second, summon at your allies. Summon Swarm. You get to summon a swarm of bats or rats or spiders. It doesn't let you summon one swarm of each, so you kind of have to pick bats, rats, or spiders. But you get a swarm of creepy crawlies to mess with people. Tree Shape doesn't actually turn you into a tree. What it does is it makes you look like a tree for 1 hour per level. So if you're level 4 for 4 hours, you look like a tree. Gotta take a drink. Tea, it's what's for drink. Warp Wood is another good spell. It's another spell that's also not I haven't really seen used. But it bends wood, which is pretty much shafts, so like spears, halberds, bows, or handles, doors, or planks. So if you're like trying to get into a location and you have warp wood prepped, it's like, oh, is that a wooden door? Warp wood. The door now bends in ways it's originally not exposed to, breaking the hinges and or lock, letting you get in, or at least making it easier for you to bust it down. Wooden wall. Hello, lavender. A wooden wall or floor or ceiling, or a wheel of a cart or wagon. Boom, warped, it bends, which means it's now not usable, so you can stop wagons and carts from leaving just off that. So it's really good for there. Then there's shape wood, where you touch wood and you can rearrange it to how you like. And it has to be wood. It can be living wood, for instance, a tree. So you can use it to have a tree grow the way you want, including in a way that pretty much turns it into a living tree house. There's a lot of forest dwelling creatures will do that in the top part of the tree, so they literally have a house that, as long as they keep it alive, it's self-healing and it's constantly growing and expanding, so they can periodically make adjustments to increase the size of rooms, add rooms, and stuff like that. So that's always fun and good. And that ends it for the second level spells. So there is some pretty good ones there. So a lot of damage based spells. The only thing I don't really like about some of the spells is the fact that there's a lot of fire heavy spells. And if you don't know, if you're in certain wilderness areas, fire magic has a way of sometimes starting forest fires and destroying nature, which means at any given time when you're using a flaming sphere or you fire trap the wrong thing in the wrong spot, you can end up starting a fire in a forest or in tall grass, which means you're actually now fully aware that you're destroying nature, which kind of goes against what druids are about. Druids are about preserving nature, protecting nature, making sure no one just randomly destroys it out of whim. But then they get spells that, if they're not careful, they can literally look at Smokey the Bear and go, I am the forest fire. It's like, no, that's how you get in trouble with nature itself, and any nature-based gods of, you're starting fires where you shouldn't. That's a big no-no. And then it's how you lose the ability to do any of your druid stuff, because again, it is a divine-based class, maybe heavily into nature, but you can still lose your abilities by starting a wildfire. So be careful on where and how you use your fire spells, because again, starting a forest fire or starting a wildfire is always a bad thing, and you can get in trouble for it, whether you want to or not. Even if you use the excuse, there's bad guys that needed to die. Starting a fire using that as an excuse to start a wildfire is not excusable, because you're still starting a wildfire. Excuse me. Now we're going to start on the third level spells, and it starts off with a strong one. They only works out and outdoors, not indoors. So if you're inside a building, a dungeon, inside the castle, keywords inside, not on top of, not outside of, inside, the spell doesn't work. The spell is Call Lightning, and it's pretty much a lightning bolt shoots down from the sky and hits a location, doing 3d6 points of electricity damage. Now you get one bolt, bolt per caster level. So the higher level you are, the more bolts you get, but you can only use one a turn. But a big thing is, it's an outdoor spell. So you have to be out in the forest, out in the plains to actually use it. Otherwise, it just cuts out. Next, we have Contagion, which inflicts subject with chosen disease. It's a good spell in terms of you're now diseasing your foe, so now they're going to have a disease wrecking them. But it's bad because it is not a good spell. That spell does not make you a good guy. It makes you a bad guy, because you're literally starting a plague that, if it doesn't get curved fast enough, you end up killing a lot more than what you want. Yeah. And here's right here, Cure Moderate Wounds, which is a second level spell for a cleric, but it's a third level spell for a druid. So just like I said with the Cure Light spell, that druids get at level 1, they get some of the cure spells, but at higher level, but they cast them at higher levels than what the cleric would. And this is a prime example of that there. So even though it does share a lot of spells with clerics, like I said, they're not all at the same level. And that's simply because it's not a cleric, it's a druid. Then we have daylight, which is a 60-foot radius of bright lights. So yay, begone darkness. Diminish plants. You reduce the size or blights the growth of a normal plant. What it means is if it's a plant creature, you reduce its size by one category. So a huge sized tree is now a large sized tree. So it suffers loss of strength and con. Some of its natural armor goes away. So it gets easier to hit, has less hit points, and doesn't hit as hard. If you cast it on a normal plant, it blights its growth, so it's not going to grow as fast. It's not going to produce as much fruit. So you can literally cripple a farm by casting it on their plants, so now their wheat fields aren't going to be nearly as plentiful as they should be. And doing that technically does make you the bad guy, so I don't recommend doing it. Dominate animal. So it does dominate person, but it's animals. The animal obeys the silent mental commands you give it. Greater Magic Fang. Works just like Magical Fang, so it has to be a natural attack works on. But instead of making it a +1 effect, you get a +1 per 3 caster levels to a max of +5. So at level 15, you get the max of +5. So it works at low levels and even better at higher levels. So while it be you turning into an animal and casting it on yourself, or you looking at your animal companion and casting it on your animal companion, either way, it works because now it's considered a plus at level 15. It's considered a +5 weapon, so that's a +5 to hit and damage rolls, and it's technically considered magical, so you're bypassing some of those things there. So it's either which way, it makes it a lot easier. Meld into stone. You and your gear can merge with a stone, so you can move through stone. So it helps you get through stone walls, stone barricades. If you're on a cliff, normally cliffs have stone wall, so you can use that to actually get to where you want to a lot faster, or at least a lot safer. So that's generally good. Neutralize poison. As I says, it as long as the spell's in effect, you don't have to worry about any sort of poison or venom because it gets rid of it. So you're golden. So if you get bit by a toxic creature, you can have that cast on you, and you're like, okay, yay, that's great. I don't have to worry about the side effects because neutralized poison gets rid of it. Plant growth. This is a good one because it grows vegetation and improves crops. It doesn't necessarily make a plant creature bigger and stronger, but what it does is if you're passing through farmland, you can cast it on a farmer's land, and now they're going to be able to harvest crops a lot sooner, and they're going to have a lot more from those crops because the spell helps with all that. So it's if you definitely want to be the good guy, frolic through the farmlands, randomly casting a spell for them all, so they all get the benefits of it. You get kudo points just because you're actually helping everyone in that area. So it's definitely a good guy thing. Then we have poison. This is a spell you do have to be, just like with contagion, you have to be careful with this one because it is considered a bad spell. Spell because only evil, not so good people do it. But you touch a subject. If they fail the save for first the spell, they lose a die 10 con, and in a minute, it repeats. So if used correctly in the right circumstances, you can end up winning a lot of different fights solely because that's weird. The creature has less con. Because it has less con, it has less hit points. Therefore, it's going to drop a lot easier. So that's real good against just winning a fight. But if you're willy nilly doing it on just random people, well, you're a bad guy. Protection from energy gives you a resistance to one of the energy types of 12, and 12. So it's really good. So unlike the other one that's 10, this one is 12, so it's slightly better. Quench extinguishes non-magical fire or one magical item. When it comes to one magical item, it's not necessarily like a random item. If there is a item with a active magical fire effect, such as a sword that's on fire because it has flaming, you can use a spell to temporarily not have the fire work. The exact details of how that works we'll go over when we hit the spell itself, but in layman's terms, easily puts out non-magical fires and temporarily messes with magical fires. Remove disease is a good one. It cures the subject of all cures the subject of all diseases affecting them. So it doesn't matter if it's one disease or all the diseases. The subject immediately becomes cured of all of them. So that's really, really helpful. It's also one of those spells that 9 out of 10 times players won't prep it until they actually start getting hit with diseases. Because instead of having it at the ready just in case they need it, it's always the whole, we can verify that you're now suffering the negative effects of a disease. Because diseases have incubation periods. And again, a lot of the times it's when people are starting to suffer the ill effects of the disease is when not only the clerics but the druids go, I gotta prep and remove disease. And a lot of times it's usually they only prep one because they assume that only one person has a disease. But a lot of the times if one person has a disease, there's a good chance other people in the party also have a disease. And it's most likely the same one. So it becomes this running gag of who ends up getting affected by the disease first is the one that gets cured, and then by the time someone else is falling ill to it, because again the incubation period isn't static at a single number. Sometimes it can be somewhere between 1 to 3 days. Other times it's 1 to 3 hours. So different party members can be hit at different times by the incubation period. So instead of just trying to cure everyone just to be safe, they always are reactive on this person is suffering from it, now I gotta prep and remove it. So it gets quite humorous quite quickly with it. Then we have Sleet Storm that hampers vision and movement of all in the affected area. So it could be a good I want to get away spell, or I really don't want the enemy to get away or have an easier time getting to us. So that can be real helpful. Snare, it creates a magical booby trap. So you can throw that down. It can definitely mess with enemies. Speak with plants. This is another one I love because it lets you to speak to normal plants and plant creatures. So you can talk to the trees. You can talk to the flowers, the grass. If there's a treant nearby, instead of having to rely on, do I know Sylvan? You can go, speak with plants. Now me and the treant can communicate because it's a plant creature and I have this spell. So you can literally go, I am a Lorax, I speak for the trees, because you can speak with the trees. We have spike growth, which creatures in the affected area take damage and may be slowed. So if they fail a save, they're considered slow for a while, which slow is a very wicked condition because you cannot run or charge, and you're limited to single actions only. So you can literally ruin a bad guy's day because, like, okay, are you going to move, or are you going to attack, or are you going to cast this spell here? You can only do one thing. You can't do all your things. You can only do one thing. So it's a real neat way to just hinder an enemy. Stone shape works just like wood shape, or shape wood, because it lets you sculpt stone into how you like it. It works well with the spell Wall of Stone. There's like wall stones, you can create walls that can have battlements and stuff in it, but you can then use um, stone shape to then better shape the walls so you can actually make structures with it instead of just walls. So you can actually have more fun and leeway with it. Or if you're like on a mountain that has a bunch of big stones, you can use stone shape to turn it into a makeshift shelter and position some parts of it to stop the. If it's a boulder, you can touch it so there's a additional supports that will stop it from just rolling off while hollowing out the inside for people to crawl into and have a safe space to sleep. Is it commonly used like that? No. That's another spell that it's it's generally good to have even if you don't actually use it, because you're in a dungeon and there's a door you need to get through. Well, you can use stone shape to have the wall form a way for you to get into the room or get out of a room. Or if it's a stone door and that has something some sort of magic protecting it, you can use stone shape to put a hole big enough for you to go through in the door. There is out of the box ways to use it to circumvent certain problems. But a big thing is it's another spell that's not really actually properly used at all, and as someone sees someone else use it in a weird way, they then start to use it in a weird way too, because they like, well, he did it, so I can do it. Yeah. Third, summon nature ally spell, which, like I said, it works just like the rest of them, but it's slightly better creatures. Water breathing. Water breathing. When you cast it, you can affect multiple people with it, but you take the time and you divide it by the number of people that you're casting on, and you get 2 hours per caster level. So if you're caster level 5, you cast it, you get 10 hours. You can either have it be on one person or divided between the entire party, which is normally a party of 4. So everyone gets 2.5 hours of water breathing. So it can be quite fun. Wind wall. Wind wall deflects arrows and technically bolts and javelins and not necessarily spears, those are too big, but like bolts, arrows, slings, it deflects those. It also can stop gases from spreading, and if the creature is small enough, it can either be stopped from going through or caught up in the wall because it's too small to actually be able to fight the wall. So in the third level spells, there are some great spells. Some can be counted as like utility, while other ones can be straight combat prowess, because again, the ability to call lightning down and smite foes, or make your natural weapons of your animal wild shape actually more effective is always great, while then also being able to do some healing and some getting rid of diseases. It's always great. So they have some really good spells here. Fourth level spells. There's not that many fourth level spells, just as you can see here. We start off with Airwalk, which You can tread on air as if it were solid up to a 45-degree angle, so you can't go straight up unless you're trying to do a circle. But it does let you walk on air. Anti-plant shell. It pretty much it keeps animated plants from getting too close to you. Not all plants, so if you're walking through a forest, trees don't suddenly start leaping away from you or anything like that. That it only affects animated plants, which typically means plant creatures. Blight. It withers one plant or deals a butt ton of damage to plant creatures. So that's a very good. Like, we have to fight an evil treant. And because treants are plant creatures, you can get, well, I'm ninth level, so I'm going to hit it with Blight, and that's 9 die 6 to that creature. So it's a very good anti-plant spell. Command plants, which sways the actions of one or more plant creatures. So that's a good way to get out of a 60 situation. So if the party does something to upset a bunch of treants, you could use this spell to unfuckle the situation. Control water. This lets you lower or raise bodies of water. So the whole, like, you wanting to walk through a river, you can use this to have a certain area have the water lowered enough for you to walk through it. So even though there's still, like, at minimum like an inch of water as the absolute lowest it can be, you can now walk through that part of the river because it's affected by lower the control water spell. So now you don't have to swim; you can literally just walk. If the water is deep enough and you cast it in there, you can actually create a whirlpool. So if you're in the middle of the ocean, you choose a spot, a whirlpool starts to form. Therefore, creatures can get sucked in down to it. So if you're trying to scuttle a fleeing pirate ship or escape a pirate ship, you can hit that there and have it be just in front of them so they end up going into it. You can either completely sink their ship, depending on how big it is, or just pretty much stop them in their tracks because they're kind of stuck right there. Not to mention the fact that if you do it once, there's a good chance they're going to keep their distance from you because they don't want to have that happen again. Because if the pirate loses its ship, there goes a lot of its plans. Because there's a good chance it's going to not be a pirate anymore. Yeah, see, cure serious wounds, which is normally a 3rd level spell for clerics, is a 4th level spell for druids. So there's another example of of another class getting it 1 level sooner than they do, but it just also verifies that druids can be healers too. Dispel magic, which works just like any dispel magic. You can use it to cancel out magical effects or as a counter spell. So yeah, they still get that ability to debuff enemies. Flame strike. This is pretty much, it's a fire that smites foes. So it's fifth. So it's pretty much, it's divine fire. So it's like haha, bam. So it's a nice AoE fire spell. Then they get freedom of movement. Freedom of movement is probably one of the most broke spells because the subject moves normally despite in impairments. Impairments meaning you can walk through a area infected by entangle. You can't be captured by nets. People can't grapple you. You don't suffer the same penalties everyone else does when they're swimming, so you can actually swim to your fullest content. And pretty much anything that would impair your movement, freedom of movement immediately counters and stops. Like, immediately counters and stops. So it's a really great spell. And then next, we have Giant Vermin. Giant vermin turns a centipede, scorpions, or spiders into a giant version of itself. If it's already a monstrous version or a giant version of it, it doesn't work. So a monstrous centipede, doesn't matter how small or how big the monstrous centipede is, it won't work because it's already a monstrous creature. A giant, uh, a giant beetle. It's already a giant beetle. You can't make it a giant, use giant vermin on it because it's already a giant. So it's pretty much normal bugs. Normal bugs. A normal centipede, a normal spider, a normal scorpion. Which does mean in order to properly use it, you have to quickly run around, find the critters, and then keep it alive with you as you travel to do it. Otherwise, you have to rely on resurrection magic to resurrect the corpse, and then cast it on it. But that's cruel and unusual punishment because you're pretty much constantly bringing it back for the sole purpose of being cannon fodder, which is a form of torture. Therefore, don't do it because it's actually considered an evil act. It may be a bug, does not matter. You are torturing a living creature. So if you want to use it on creatures that are naturally in the environment you currently are actually in. So don't be the bad guy. Hailstorm. Hailstorm does a bundle of it's a mixture of cold and bludgeoning damage because you're being hit with ice in a 40-foot cylinder area. So it's an AoE. This stuff gets hit spell. So kind of like with Flaming Wrath. Here's another AoE spell, but it's based off cold instead of fire. Then we have Reincarnate. Bring said subject back in a random body. That is technically a form of resurrection, but it's a roll on this list. You come back as one of these creatures here. If you get lucky, the DM gets to choose something unique for you. If you get unlucky, you come back as something that you really don't want to come back as because you lose all your racial traits and replace them with whatever you come back as. So that's a hopefully you roll good. Rebel Vermin. It pretty much any sort of insect, spider, or other types of vermin stay away from you so they don't come within 10 feet of you. So it's a good way of I don't want to get bitten by these mosquitoes and catch some sort of disease. So as we're going through this marsh, I'm going to have repel vermin on me. So we're just going to walk through, not care. Rusting Grasp. Your touch corrodes iron and alloys, which pretty much means you can touch someone's armor, someone's metal shield, their sword, and you can corrode it, pretty much making it a useless piece of junk. Magical items are more resistant to it, but not technically immune to it. If you run across metal that is resistant or immune, not resistant, but it's something that's immune to rusting effects, then the spell won't work on it because it can't be affected by rusting effects. But generally, that spell makes you the bane of most paladins and fighters. There's one of the most scary things to throw at someone decked out in metal armor is something that has the ability to rust it. That's one of the reasons rust monsters usually are feared by fighters and paladins because they're the ones being targeted by the rust effects of the rust monster. Next, we have Scrying. Yes, druids can use this Scrying spell. Therefore, they can spy at subjects from a distance. Ooh. Gotta love Big Brother keeping an eye on you in the forest. Then we have Spike Growth. It creates an area where creatures in it take damage, and there has to be stone in the area to have it work on. So if it's just a big open plains, then technically it won't work. The fine details are going to be covered by the spell itself when we go over the spell itself. But it can also have the chance of slowing the target, which is always good. Thank you for that message, viewer. You are much appreciated. Uh, the last spell we're going to cover today is Summon Nature's Ally 4, which works just like the rest, but it's a bigger list of creatures. So far, out of the 4 levels worth of spells we've gone through, druids have buff spells, they have damage spells, they have spells that can help remove conditions from people, help heal people, and generally just help keep you alive out in the wilderness. So they do have a bundle of really good spells. Next week we will be covering going into their 5th level spells, and hopefully, excuse me, I'll be able to actually have my co-host be available for it. So, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Dun dun dun.